Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on marketing the e-commerce business. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'm going to be your host today, and our presenter is Cliff Ennico. More on Cliff in just a minute. This webinar is being done in collaboration with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library. In that regard, I'd like to invite Beth Stoller from the Monroe Chamber to also give some brief introductory remarks. Beth?
Thanks. Good morning or good afternoon. Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Stoller. I'm Operations Manager and Event Manager for the Monroe Chamber. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. On behalf of the Monroe Chamber, the Edith Wheeler Library, and SCORE, I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar. Also, for this Build Your Business Workshop series, we're very pleased to welcome the Monroe Economic Development Commission also as a co-sponsor. This series was created in response to a survey that was sent out to the Monroe Chamber and Economic Development community. We received over 100 replies, and today we are now at week 5 of this 6-week program. If you missed any of the last 4, you can go to SCORE's on-demand website and find the links, or you can subscribe to the Chamber's newsletter, which I'll put in the chat area, because we have been sharing the current upcoming webinars, as well as links to the previous webinars that have played. Next week is our last week. Next Thursday, it's going to be at 6 o'clock. The topic will be trusted advisors, why it is so important to surround yourself with good people. And that will be presented by Marianne Croce. And now this brings us back to where we are today. I'm really looking forward to hearing Cliff Ennico's presentation about e-commerce, because there's so much to learn here. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I will turn this back over to you, Bob. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Beth. And now just some brief information on SCORE before I introduce Cliff. SCORE is a nonprofit national partner of the SBA, and locally here at Fairfield County, we have over 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners that you can see on the screen. If I could ask Cliff to move the slide. First of all, we offer one-on-one counseling, and you can have that face-to-face, video, email, telephone, however it's convenient to you. And you can access that by using the yellow link that you see on the screen or going to our website and clicking on the Request a Mentor button. We also offer a wide range of educational programs like the one today, about 100 throughout the year. And lastly, we offer extensive resources on our website, including access to subject matter experts. Our next live webinar, as Beth mentioned, will be next Thursday at 6 p.m. And the topic is Trusted Advisors Are Valuable at Every Stage of Business, with Marianne Croce presenting. And again, you can find more specifics on that on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And if you're on our website, that's where you can also access a wide range of on-demand webinars, including the first 4 in this series. Just some logistics about today's event. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and Cliff will take the questions then. If you have a question, though, you can type it in at any time using the Q&A button, which is located by hovering at the bottom of your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time. It is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available on our website within the next day or so. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Cliff Ennico. Cliff is a nationally recognized authority on small business, legal, and tax issues, and is best known as the former host of Money Hunt, the PBS television series for entrepreneurs. He is the author of 16 books, including the crowdfunding handbook, Raise Money for Your Small Business or Startup with Equity Funding Portals. Cliff also judges business plan and elevator pitch competitions nationwide. He is an attorney and a small business consultant based in Fairfield, Connecticut, and he has helped launch thousands of businesses in his 40-year career. I'll now turn it over to Cliff. Cliff, it's all yours.
Hey, Bob, thank you very much. And Bob and Beth, and a very happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody, those who are celebrating the day. And for the purposes of today only, my last name is Ennico. Okay, that is it. Just take the O and put it in the front, and I think we're good for today. Bob and Beth, thank you for that very lovely introduction. A couple of more words just about me. Why am I doing a program like this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Back in the early 2000s, I was picked up by eBay as a presenter. eBay at the time had something called eBay University, which was a team of experts who traveled around the country, basically teaching people how to build real businesses out of their eBay selling hobby. And I was their legal and tax person. I was, getting people excited talking about things like sales tax and fraud and copyright infringement and all this other wonderful stuff that scared the crap out of people. Most people basically needed liquor after one of my presentations generally. But it opened up an incredible door for me. Back about 10 years ago, I wrote and published a book, which is still in print, a legal and tax guide for eBay sellers, called the eBay Sellers Legal and Tax Guide. Very obvious title, which is still in print. And I've had the privilege over the years of meeting thousands of eBay and Amazon and other Shopify and other e-commerce sellers around the country. It's an incredible community, very hard to realize, but over 4 million Americans today make either a full or a part-time living selling stuff on one of the major online platforms. It's a big thing, and it's absolutely growing. So without any further ado, now, if you doubted that I was a lawyer, okay, take a look at this slide. We always tell you what we're not going to do before we tell you what we're going to do. The most important one is the last one. We are going to get into some legal and tax stuff in this program, but there's a very big difference between giving out legal and tax information and giving out legal and tax advice. There's a big difference between saying, well, this is what the law is generally all about, which is what I do, and saying, well, this is what you, Bob, should do, and Beth, this is why you should do something different. That's one-on-one advice, which I really can't do on this program. So if any of you hear something on this program, it sounds like a great idea, you do it and it doesn't work out, and you end up going bankrupt, losing your business, you lose your house, your spouse divorces you, the kids don't want to talk to you anymore, the dog pees on your leg, and you're living on a diaper box under the Brooklyn Bridge. You can't sue anybody on this program as a result of that. So that's what all that garbage says. Okay, let's talk about the internet. Okay, we've learned a lot. I've been giving these talks now since the early 90s, since the foundation of the internet. And one of the things, and this is a slide that has not changed in 20 years. We've learned a lot about the internet in the 25 years that it has been in our world. Hard to believe, isn't it? The internet has only been on our world for 25 years. Those of you who are old enough to know what it was like to work in an office setting in the 1970s and 1980s, you know how much has changed, how dramatically the internet has changed our lives. If you had to pick the major transformational event of our lives, the baby boom generation, it was the development of the internet, not Vietnam or anything else that happened during our lives. This is the pivotal event. It is a quantum leap in technology. But still, and this is just as true as it was 20 years ago, selling online today is a little bit like driving a car in 1918. Now, back in 1918, people were not stupid. They knew the automobile was coming. It was going to transform the way we do things, kind of like electric cars are today. But nobody was really going out and shooting their horse in the backyard yet, because while the car was coming and everybody recognized that, the infrastructure that made the automobile an everyday necessity did not exist in 1918. There were very few paved roads, very few gas stations. If you ever go to a museum of antique autos and you see the cars from that era, they all have these massive toolboxes strapped to the side of the car, because if you broke down on a country lane, driving on a Sunday with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you were the one who had to get out, get under the hood, and fix whatever the problem was. That's kind of like and by the way, this is very much the way the electric cars are today. By the way, we are exactly where we were with the gas powered engine in 1918. Electric cars are going to be an everyday necessity. We won't be using fossil fuel cars in 10 years, but until they get a charging station on every corner, and until the charges are 5 minutes or less, I'm going to hold off buying one. And I think a lot of people feel the same way that I do. You have to know a little bit about what's going on under the hood today. It's not a seamless experience the way everybody tells you it's going to be. And each year there's something new to learn. Okay. Let's talk about some basics of internet marketing. First of all, the internet is a transformational development in the way that people market their businesses. And this is something that hasn't been given the publicity that it deserves. Historically, for thousands of years, marketing a business has been about pushing your message into people's faces. You take out an ad in a newspaper, you send a direct mail piece through the mail. You send somebody an unsolicited spam email. It's all about, marketing has traditionally been about pushing the message into your face. But the web is different. The web is not about pushing your message. If I'm online and I'm trying to push something in your face, you have all kinds of things on your computer or your laptop right now that can block my message from getting through. You have spam filters, you have pop-up blockers, you have ad blockers, you have all the privacy settings now on Facebook, and I'm sorry, Meta, but everybody still calls it Facebook, so I'm still going to call it Facebook. You have all these things whose sole purpose in life is to prevent my message from getting through to you, even though it's a message you need to hear or a message that would benefit you in some ways. So my challenge as an internet marketer is I got to get around all of your defenses. I have to seduce you. I have to pull you to me. The internet, marketing on the internet is all about pulling the customer to you and getting them to look at your website, your eBay store, your Amazon store, whatever it is you're using to get your products out to people. You got to get the eyeballs to come to you. And there's a whole art, which we'll talk about later on, about how that gets done. Also, too, the web can be an unforgiving place. If you've ever seen anyone trolled or flamed on the internet, you know how brutal that experience is. When you make a mistake in a print ad, well, you can always correct it, and it goes out in next week's newspaper, and nobody remembers what the error was. If you make a mistake with your advertising online, that is going out to billions of people around the world, and it lasts forever. It is permanent. Mistakes are often brutally punished. Most importantly, though, marketing online is labor and time intensive. It takes time. There are so many platforms now, nobody can really do an effective job of marketing effectively on all of the platforms that are existing. You have to pick and choose which ones are going to work for you. Look for the biggest bang for the buck. Go where your customers are, not where you think they should be. Make sure the customers are there. Focus on what works for you. I had this conversation with a very famous business book author the other day. She makes her money primarily selling online. And she says, I don't even have a LinkedIn profile, Cliff. Why do I need a LinkedIn profile? I'm not looking for a job. I'm not really looking to attract corporate America. I'm looking to attract buyers for my stuff online. So I'm looking at Instagram. I'm looking at Pinterest. I'm looking at TikTok. And she's absolutely correct. Now, me as a lawyer, on the other hand, I have to have a LinkedIn page because I am looking to pitch legal business, and people aren't going to respect a lawyer that doesn't have a good LinkedIn page. So LinkedIn is unlike her, LinkedIn is very, very important to me. Whereas Instagram, forgive me, a video, a photo or a video of me sitting at my computer drafting a contract for somebody, that's not going to get a lot of hits. So Instagram, my work that I do is not very visual. So those kind of promotional sites don't really work well for me. Everybody's different, and that's my message. And you have to find out what works for you. Okay, now, what does a successful e-commerce business look like? Here's what it looks like in a single graphic. It's an octopus. Okay. Now, what do we know about an octopus? An octopus has basically three parts to it. If you look at the diagram, if you look at the picture, you'll see exactly there are three parts to an octopus. Number one, there is the head. This is where the eyeballs are, and it's also where all the digestive organs are. Basically, the whole body is up in that head there, north of the eyeballs. Okay, that's what it is. That's part number one. Secondly, you've got these tentacles, and there are 8 of them, which is why we call it an octopus, 8 legs from the Greek. There are 8 of these, and these things float around in the water looking for prey. And when prey swims by, one of these things reaches out and grasps it. Then the third part of the octopus are those little sucker thingies on the butt. There's a proper name for them, but I'm sorry, I don't know much about marine biology. Just go with this. This is a metaphor, okay? But you have these sucker things that once the prey is caught, drives the prey to the head where it is chewed up and digested and all that other good stuff, okay? Where it comes out at the end, by the way, I haven't a clue, so don't even ask me about it. Do not put that one in the chat room, okay? I have no idea. Okay, it's a metaphor, okay? This is what an octopus looks like, and this is what your your successful e-commerce business is going to look like as well. Like the octopus, it has three parts to it. The first thing you would need to do is you need to build a killer website. Now, I know some of you are saying, oh, dude, okay, now you're showing your age, you're a boomer. You know, it's all about social media. It's all about mobile apps now. It's all about smartphone, smart contracts. You're absolutely correct, but I'm going to tell you something. And this is one thing that has not changed since the very dawn of the internet 25 years ago. There is one place and only one in the entire internet where you can sell stuff and keep 100% of the profits that you make. And that is the stuff that you sell on your own website. Even though I realize it's 2022 and there are all these other things out there, you still need to have a website of your own with your business name, your trademark on it. It's an absolute buzzkill. If I'm working with a client who's selling online and I don't see that they have a website in place, that is an instant buzzkill and a credibility kill to me. I don't believe that they're for real. I think there's something floating around in space. Okay, they do not have a home. You need to have a home. Why? Because people expect you to have one, number one. Number two, it's the only place where you can, and this is where your best stuff should be. This is the stuff that gives you the highest profit margins. Should all be the stuff that's on your website. And everything else that you do online, the goal should be to drive it to the website, because that's where you get to keep 100% of the profits. All the stuff that you do, the website is the head of the octopus. This is the mission central. This is where the real money is made, is on your website. Okay, that's the thing. The third reason, by the way, to have a killer website, and we'll talk about this later on, it will make it much easier to sell your e-commerce business when the time has come that you want to retire and you want to generate some goodwill from this business and sell it to somebody else. It'll be a lot easier to do it if everything ties in to a central website. So that's number one. Now, what about the tentacles of the octopus, the things that float around in the water looking for prey? These are your outputs on other e-commerce platforms, eBay, Amazon, Shopify, Craigslist. I still put Craigslist on here. A lot of Craigslist has gotten a bad rap lately, but for a lot of good reasons. But for a service business, especially like a local service business, like a plumber or an electrician, there's a lot of benefit to being on Craigslist. And I know there are a lot of new platforms out there right now. They are proliferating right now. There are specialty platforms, especially in the antiques and collectibles field now. eBay has a lot more competition than it used to have. But these are the outposts. These are where you create these outposts to drive traffic to your website. That's what you do. These are the tentacles. Now, what are the sucker thingies? The third thing, the things that drive the tentacle picks up a piece of passing prey, otherwise known as a customer, and the sucker thingies drive the prey to the head where it is digested. These are all the things that you do to market your website and your e-commerce your postings online and offline. Offline marketing is still very important in the e-commerce world. One of the dirtiest little secrets of the web, and this has not changed in 30 years, most people learn about new websites and new online vendors through offline media. How many times have you read an article in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal about some new development, some new thing in fintech or something, and they mention all these websites and you go to visit them to get a better sense of what they're all about? This is how most people, especially people over a certain age, this is how most people are finding out about new online vendors and new online sources for goods and services. So offline marketing is still very, very important, even in the online world. And then last but not least, measure your performance. Okay, this is your online octopus. And we're going to go through each of these 5 steps right now and figure out and talk more specifically about things to do. Okay, let's talk about your business website, your e-commerce octopus. The head is your business website. Everything else that you do are tentacles that drive traffic to your website. Pick your name properly. Make sure that it is easy to spell and can easily be remembered by people. The most important thing about a web domain URL is that it must be memorable. If you are, Cliff Ennico, world's greatest small business attorney, who does look a little bit like Richard Nixon when you look at him closely, but he's actually a great guy when you get to know him.com. that's not going to get, that's not memorable. You can't keep all that crap in your head. I would rather, when I'm working with a client, I would rather see a name that is easy to remember and has nothing to do with what the goods and services are than a client, than a website URL that is not memorable, but describes precisely what the company does and what it offers. I would much rather see a nice, simple name. What does Monster have to do with looking for jobs online? What does Amazon have to do with selling books and media online? And now they sell everything online. It has nothing to do with it. So that's the thing. That's another thing. Understand the online marketing tools. Budget your time. Again, the most important thing is making sure that you're promoting your goods and services in the most appropriate venues. If Instagram is not going to drive traffic to your website, you don't need an Instagram account. Okay, you may want to open one just to make sure that nobody else gets the name, that you want. But other than that, I mean, I have an Instagram account. I have never used it, but because I don't want anybody else being at Cliff Ennico on Instagram. Okay, I don't. It's not. But LinkedIn, yes. Certain other social media sites, the answer is yes. Okay, so now we have to talk about your website. How do you drive traffic? And here we have to learn about SEO, otherwise known as search engine optimization. This is a design tool. This is not a tentacle. This is a way of setting up your website so that it's very attractive to the search engine spiders that troll the web looking for new sites, new information. I mean, Google, all the other search engine platforms have bots called spiders that troll the internet constantly looking for new, and you want to be visible to those spiders. So, for example, always get a .com URL. Do not get a .net, a .biz, a .info, a .us. Again, you may want to get these things to prevent somebody else from glomming them, but you want to pick the .com because even 30 years later, the .com URLs are much more visible to the search engine spiders than the other domain name extensions that are now infinite. I mean, I could be .Cliff Ennico, which would be great. Cliff Ennico, Cliff at Cliff Ennico at Cliff Ennico .Cliff Ennico. Now that's a real ego trip right there, right? But no one's going to look for that because no one can spell my last name. That's the problem. Ennico. It's easy to look at right now, but after we finish this, if you think about my last name, you're going to have trouble remembering it. You're going to put one N, two C's. You're going to put letters in there that don't belong. I would much rather be flubber.com or something like that, which is very easy to remember. That's why, again, I talk about SEO consultants. You have to find the right keywords. These are some keywords, some sources where you can look for suggestions as to the various keywords that should be on your site that the search engine spiders are going to look for. Use lots of nouns when creating documents. Search engine spiders tend to look for nouns as opposed to fully created sentences. So try to think of what are the 10 nouns that most correctly describe your products, your services, what it is you're looking to sell, and use those nouns when creating your website documents. Each page should have its own content. Each document should have its own theme. Use the strongest keywords early in the copy. Okay, headings are very, very important. A heading does not have to be grammatically correct. It's more important to get the best keywords into your heading of whatever it is you're putting on your website than it is to get it grammatically correct. So for example, if you look at my website, the cliffennico.com, this is the website for my law practice. I have a bunch of them, but this is the one for my law practice, is cliffennico.com. You'll see I have a section. Here are some of the things that I do for my clients: draft employment contracts, draft consulting contracts, draft other kinds of contracts. Why is it so repetitive there? The answer is because the word draft contracts, those are key words for me. I want the world to know that drafting contracts is something I spend a lot of my time doing, and I do lots of different ones. So I could say drafting all kinds of contracts for my clients, but that's only one time. By the way, by the repetition, I'm getting those keywords in over and over again. So the spider is going to look at that and say, this is a contract drafting dude. This is what he does. Okay, so they're going to push me higher in the search engine rankings. Now, again, some of you on the call probably are IT consultants. You have a lot more familiarity with this even than I do. So I'm simplifying a very complex topic, but keep in mind, don't you repeat keywords unnecessarily. There's one more thing about SEO that I want to talk about too. And this has been very important. When you set up your website, this is not on the slides. Make sure, a lesson I have learned the last couple of years, I'm getting involved now. There are some business brokers around the country who specialize in buying and selling e-commerce businesses. And I'm proud to say that I have relationships with some of these people. I'm their lawyer of choice, their lawyer recommendation of choice for doing these kinds of transactions. It is very helpful to, when you set up an e-commerce business, form a corporation or LLC, and make sure that the website is registered in the name of the LLC or the corporation, not you individually. This is a very important thing. When you claim your domain URL, or when you're dealing with the website host, make sure that the corporation or the LLC is the owner of record of everything. That not only protects you against liability, but it also makes your business easier to sell when the time comes. When a client is looking to sell their e-commerce business and everything is all over the place, some accounts are in the individual name, some are in the company name, some are in the name of a different company. You got an Amazon account with 5 different names on it. That makes it very, very difficult to sell. It's very difficult for those assets to transfer over to the buyer. Have everything in a single company name. And if you are doing multiple things online, you have a law practice online, you're selling junk on eBay over here, have a different company for each one of those things, and make sure that everything tracks to the correct name, to the correct corporation or LLC. That will make your business much, much easier to sell. Search engine advertising. This is also, for those of you older folks, known as pay per click, but it still hasn't changed. Basically, you create an ad at some point, and you basically pay a fee each time someone clicks on the ad and is directed to your website, whether or not they buy anything when they get there. Okay, what you're doing is you're paying for eyeballs, you're paying for clicks. Those of you who've ever done, have done a Facebook ad account, or have participated in any of the Google advertising programs, this is what they are doing. You're creating an ad, and whenever they see somebody searching for something that matches one of your keywords, the ad appears, and when somebody clicks on it, Google and Facebook get a certain amount of money for that, whether or not the person actually buys anything once they get to your website. Okay, so keep in mind, when you're buying, you're paying for clicks. You're not paying for actual sales. Okay, be very important. Consider using Google AdSense. I think a lot of people use Google AdSense. Google, let's face it, is the premier search engine right now. That may change over time, but right now it is. Getting on Google and having a strong presence on Google is very, very important. Facebook as well, although Facebook ad accounts are very tricky. I could give a whole course on those. But those are the 2 primary places where you want to be in terms of your sucker thingies, making sure that you are attracting eyeballs and that things are getting to your website. Here's some tips. You can easily spend a fortune on this, by the way. It's very easy to do. There's a real game that you play. So let's say, for example, that I was a lawyer who was looking to attract people who are buying franchises. Let's say that, which is, by the way, one of the things I do for my clients. If any of you are interested in buying a franchise, this is one of the things I do. I represent you. I plow through all the documents. I negotiate with the franchisor. I do stuff like that. I could try for franchise attorney as my keywords. Okay, but that's going to lead to a very big fee. That's going to be something like $10 a click, or something like that. The costs can get out of control very quickly the more general your search terms are when you're doing search engine advertising. What I did years ago is, and this is back in the days when the internet was much younger than it was today. What I did was I did franchise attorney New York as the search term, and that was only something like a nickel a click. I'm going back now. I'm going back to the early 2000s. It's more expensive than that, I'm sure, today. And then what I did was I did franchise attorney New Jersey, franchise New Jersey, Connecticut, and I did all the 50 states, including Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. Okay, what I was doing there was I was getting, for a nickel a click, I was getting the exact same exposure that a big Wall Street attorney law firm was getting by claiming franchise attorney as the search term. That's one of the ways you can kind of game the system. But because I've learned over the years, when people are searching for an attorney, they're not just looking for an attorney anywhere. They're looking for an attorney in a specific place. They're looking for a franchise attorney in New York. So my franchise attorney New York keyword search was getting me the exact same information, the exact same eyeballs that the bigger firms were getting by just using franchise attorney, but it was more refined by doing it that way. That's a little trick, by the way, that you may want to do. The more precise you can do your search terms when you're taking out an ad or you're buying ad space on any of the major platforms, the more cost effective it is going to be. Okay. By the way, and you have to be ruthless here. If an ad is not generating clicks, or if a platform is not generating clicks to your website, drop it. Do not be afraid. You have to be a little ruthless here. If something isn't working, don't get sentimentally attached to it. If you're not getting results from a particular platform, get rid of it. Here are some other ways. Here are some other again, we're talking now about the sucker thingies, the marketing tools that you use to drive business to your website. Email and newsletters, people are not doing these as much anymore. It's more about blogs and stuff like that, but the same rules apply to a blog. I mean, I have a blog. My weekly syndicated column, Succeeding in Your Business, is basically a blog now. I don't think people read it on the newspapers anymore. They read it online. That's where it is. So it's really a blog, although I don't call it that. You have exactly a half a second to get somebody's attention. It doesn't really matter what your email newsletter says, as long as the headline gets your message across. Why are you doing this, by the way? Why are you doing a blog or something? The idea is to keep your name fresh in people's minds. Hey, Cliff Ennico, he's still out there. Here's my weekly thoughts on whatever. I mean, I may not get any business yet, but it reminds you, so that when something does come up and all of a sudden, you get one of my emails, you say, wait a minute, Cliff Ennico, yeah, he'd be a good guy for this. Yeah, I should call him. People forget that I exist. It's hard to do. I know I'm such a colorful character, but people do forget, and you want to keep in people's minds as much as you can. So email, some kind of regular communication to all your clients, providing, of course, you comply with the anti-spam laws. Here you got to be careful. Make sure that you always get people to opt in to your blog or whatever it is you're looking to do. When it comes to privacy now, we're kind of migrating from an opt-out world to an opt-in world. We're moving from a world which, for the last 20 years, I could send stuff to anybody, and I give you an opportunity to opt out. And as long as I give you that opportunity, I can stick anything in your face that I want to. The world is changing now as a result of the GDPR in Europe and some of the recent privacy legislation here in the United States. California, Virginia just adopted a data privacy law. It's going to go into effect January of next year, very similar to California's. The world is moving now to an opt-in world where you have to ask people's permission before you start sending them any kind of irregular communication. So be mindful of that. Keep it short, bite-sized information nuggets, bullet points, make it easy. People do not have time to read lengthy articles anymore. Keep it short, keep it simple. You should be able to get through it in 30 seconds or less, whatever your copy is, whatever your text is. Okay, blogs, fastest growing area of the internet as far as text communications are concerned. Here are the tips for successful blogs. First of all, remember the 3 C's: cool, compelling content. You're in showbiz, and people should actually look forward to getting these things from you. Years ago, and I'm going way back before the internet, when my wife and I first moved to Connecticut in the early 1980s, there was a local fellow. He was a teacher, an English teacher in a local high school, and he basically had a number of side hustles that he did. He did windows. He cleaned carpets. He was a clown. He would do, birthday parties and stuff where they do the balloon animals and stuff like that. He had a bunch of side hustles going on as a teacher, as all teachers do if they want to make money. And he had a thing, 4 times a year, he would send out the cleaning news. It was basically a direct mail piece that he would, a little newsletter, 8 pages long, that he would send to all of his customers, clients, and whoever wanted to subscribe to it. Back then you had to let him know in person that you got it through the mail. Okay, this is how far back I am going here. I'm going back to the early 80s. But the reason I mentioned it is this guy was a master at this. He really was. The cleaning news I mean, he had his information in there, his price list and all, but it was funny as hell. He was a great writer, so instead of saying it's time to clean your carpets, you'd open this thing up and there was a gigantic picture of a dust mite magnified 10,000 times by an electron microscope. And if you've never seen a dust mite blown up that big, that is one ugly as hell bug. Let me tell you right now. And this thing is staring at you, and this 30-point type, it's dust mite season again. Save your homes from this ferocious creature. It was hysterical. We loved it. We passed it around. We gave it, this was not junk mail. This was literature. We gave this to our neighbors, and let me ask you this. I mean, how did any of us know that he was any good? Okay. Answer, we didn't. But we just loved. How many of you here, just telling you, and he would actually, I remember he had a little column of household tips, so for example, question, can you use a toothbrush to clean the tile grout in your shower stall? Answer, yes, but be sure not to use it as a toothbrush afterwards. This was the kind of dad humor that this guy did. How many of you here like him? Just from the way I described it. He's long since retired. I don't even know if he's still alive right now. He retired to Florida years ago. But how many of you here like him? You do, don't you? How many of you would hire him to clean your carpets as a clown for your kid's birthday party? You probably would, right? How do you know if he's any good? You don't. But his stuff was so brilliant that was his marketing advantage. And I've tried to copy him, actually, in a lot of my blogs. I always try to make my stuff interesting and entertaining. Hopefully it's informative as well, but if nothing else, it'll keep you awake for an hour. That's the same principle applies to doing these webinars for SCORE that I use. Make it compelling. You're in show business. Be a little entertaining, funny, dramatic. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to show your personality, because people tell stories, because people remember that. They don't remember details of lectures. What they do remember is stories. Chances are a lot of you are going to remember that high school English teacher long after you've forgotten how to spell my last name. Okay, you'll remember that story about this guy that was using a very funny newsletter to promote a cleaning business. Okay, it's the same on the web. Use a personal tone and platform. Include lots of keywords. Remember, nouns. Search engine spiders are all about nouns. It's up to you whether you want to generate comments. Obviously you want to be as interactive as possible. I personally don't, because mine's going out to a mass audience, and I don't have time to respond to all the emails and text messages that I get in response to my weekly column. There is something though called an RSS feed. Some of you are familiar with it. Use it, however. That is a tool that people can use to basically subscribe to your blog. And it's a great tool, by the way, because it's an opt-in approach to your blog that will satisfy any of the data privacy regulators that are out there. Use an RSS feed. I personally do. If you sign on to, if you go to my column at succeedinginyourbusiness.com, that's the website that I have for my syndicated column from my blog. You'll see there's a button there where you can subscribe to it, where you get an email notice every week saying, hey, Cliff's got a new column, click here if you want to see it. That is a great tool, and it satisfies all the privacy regulations that are out there. Keep it updated. The difficult thing about blogs is that you have to keep them up to date. And frankly, this is true of all social media. The biggest thing about social media, and it's the main reason why I do not have the presence on social media that frankly I should have, is it's time consuming. It is a time vampire. It sucks the time out of your life. I only have literally a few minutes a day to update my postings, my column, whatever it is that I have to do. I've only got a few minutes a day. I'm so busy with other stuff. You have to do it on a regular basis though, because if it's not fresh, people discard it. I have a bunch of YouTube videos now that have garnered hundreds of thousands of views that are getting to be 5 or 6 years old. And I've actually had some people tell me I really ought to re-record them now, only to get a more recent timestamp on these things so that people will think that it's more current information. They're afraid that I'm giving out of date information. Micro blogs, I'm not a big Twitter fan, as this shows you, but hey, it's a way of building a following and keeping in touch with your fan base. That's what Twitter is, as far as I'm concerned. If I'm a celebrity, if I'm an entertainer or something like that, this is how I want to keep in touch with my fan base and let them know all the new stuff that I'm doing, when I'm going to be appearing in concert, when I'm going to drop a new album, or drop a new video, whatever. This is where I want to be. bookmarking sites, online forums, and e-zines. This is somewhat older technology, but people still read them, especially older generations. If you're pitching your business to people who are older, baby boomers and Gen X, you might want to consider doing something in these spaces because the people still look at them. They're not, they're not strictly for the birds. Social networking sites. Obviously social media marketing is very, very important. But there are some tips here. Don't spread yourself too thin. It is awfully time consuming to keep track of all your postings on 5 or 6 different social networks. It's very hard to do. Pick the ones where you're much more likely to find the customers that you are looking for and go for them. Use your photo, not a cartoon character. I'm a big fan of this. I mean, unless you're in a business that's kind of cool and hip, and you're pitching to teenagers and younger people who are attracted to those kinds of things. But if you're a serious business person, if you have serious products and services you have to offer, using a cartoon or an avatar, it doesn't really make you look serious. It's not the image that you want. And please have a professional do your photo. I mean, I will tell you, attorneys are the worst. Worst violators here. I actually give this talk to attorneys, and one of the pieces of advice I give them: do not put your photo on your website or any of your social media unless it has been professionally done. Okay, do not do this, because let's face it, most attorneys have faces that frighten small children. This is a fact of life. Okay, attorneys, there are some attorneys who are very good looking, but let's face it, no one wants to hire an attorney just on the basis of what they look like, right? You don't really care. Most people don't care what their attorney looks like, as long as they're good and they can do the job, right? Nobody cares about this. So why do you have this photo of you guys? Or, it totally detracts from the professional image that you want people to have of you. Be very careful. Years ago in the town where I live, there was an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist, who used to, a very good one. In fact, I actually used him. My father-in-law had macular degeneration late in life, and this doctor did wonders for this guy. He did wonderful stuff, but he always had an ad in the local paper every week, and he had eyes like Marty Feldman. Remember Artie Feldman, whose eyes like bugged out like 3 feet from his head? That's the way he looked, and he had this wild hair. He looked just like Marty Feldman, and he always had his photo in there. And I actually got to know him a little bit, and he asked me one time, Cliff, just out of curiosity, I have this ad in the paper, local paper every week. It doesn't seem to be pulling for me. A little bit about marketing. Please tell me, what am I doing wrong here? How do you tell a guy who's got a laser, focused on your retina, saying, well, maybe the issue is that your photo isn't doing you justice, and you're not really looking as good as you could, with that. Maybe you ought to have a professional help you do a more professional looking photo, because frankly, you're scaring people away. You kind of look like a mad scientist here. It's a very hard thing to do when a guy's got a laser trained in your eyeball. It really is. The thing about social media, make sure also that your postings are relevant. Nobody really cares what you had for breakfast. People do this. They post up what they're eating, especially when they're traveling. Well, that's really cool, but that doesn't really tell me anything about you, except that you like to eat and you probably have an obesity issue, like some of us do. It doesn't really tell me anything about you. Make sure that the postings are relevant to what it is that you're trying to sell, and keep in mind you're creating an image here. Be very conscious of what you're putting up there. Here's my test. I use what I call the political adversary test. If I were running for public office, something I promise you I will never do. The country is safe. But if I were ever running for public office and my adversary's SWAT team got a hold of this posting, would I be concerned about it? That's my test. I call it the political adversary. Before you post something on social media, ask yourself, if you were running for office and your adversary got a hold of this, would it be a problem for you? If the answer is yes, or I'm not sure, do not post it. Simple as that. Okay, online reviews, get over it. People look for them and people read them. How many of you here have bought a book on Amazon after reading the customer reviews? They all gave them 4.5 stars. Never mind that the people posting these are employees who work for the publisher. You do realize that, of course, about Amazon. A lot of these people are shills. They are not real people who do those reviews. There are people who have a vested interest in either the book or the author. Usually they're people who work for the publisher. I can tell you some great stories about that too from some of my books too, but I don't think we have time for that today. People look for them, find the sites that review business like yours, so Yelp.com, Nextdoor.com that Nextdoor is becoming a big thing right now. Where your neighbors are talking about local things. Hey, we got this cat in the neighborhood. Is he stray? Does he belong to somebody? This is it. But people are also looking at to promote businesses. There are some special ones, plumbingcontractorhub.com. You probably never heard of this, but if you're a plumber, and this is where plumbers from all around the country can create little ads, tied to their zip code. So if I'm looking for a plumber 06825, guess what? If I'm doing this, I will find a list of local plumbers. If the review site allows you to create a web page for a reasonable fee, do it. It's more likely the site will protect you against flaky reviews if you are a paying customer. And I hope you don't think I'm too cynical here, but let's face it, I do notice with some of the review websites, you don't see too many bad reviews from people who have actually created a page on the review site. The ones that don't tend to have more bad reviews. Now, maybe that's just anecdotal. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything. But I do think it has something to do with how positive your image is on these review sites. First of all, encourage your customers to post positive reviews. Lots of them. Whenever I get an email from someone saying, "Hey, Cliff, I saw one of your YouTube videos. I think you're fantastic," whatever, the first thing I say is to this guy, "Thank you for your kind words. Please, if you could help me promote these on your socials, say some nice things about this on your social media, I would be very much grateful to you." Ask for positive reviews. Have people go out and say, "Hey, this Cliff Ennico guy, you got to look at his video here on YouTube on how to sell things. He's terrific. He's a lawyer, but he's funny as hell." That gets me a lot of my business and stuff like that. Be very careful though about. And by the way, if anyone ever posts a negative review, do I have a slide on that? No. If anyone posts a negative review, don't get involved in a fight with this person. Okay. If somebody posts a negative review, here's the response. In fact, I even, and let's face it, it doesn't happen to me very often, but I have a stock response. I'm saying, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. I'm sorry you feel you had a bad experience with my service. This is the first that I've heard that you were dissatisfied with my service. Please contact me offline and I will do whatever I can to make it right. Thank you. That's exactly my response. Now, what am I doing there? I'm doing a couple of things. First of all, I'm saying, hey, I'm basically a good person, and hey, I really do care about the experience that my customers have. But more importantly, I'm getting a little message in there. I'm saying, this is the first I've heard that you were dissatisfied with my service. That kind of sends the message to the world that the person posting the negative review is maybe a little flaky, that they're the kind of people who go right to social media and say negative things without even contacting the person and trying to get them the opportunity to make something right. As my father used to say, they're the kind of people who write letters to the editor. There was a message in that. People who do that sort of thing are not, 100%. Okay, that's what you want, but that's the thing. Never get involved in a fight with these people because it makes you look bad. It makes you look. No one wants to hire a professional that's going to get involved in a fight with them down the road over billing or whatever. You don't want to appear to be contentious with these people. Just simply either ignore it completely. I mean, let's put it this way. When I look at it, on the few occasions where I've had negative reviews, I read the review carefully. If it looks like the person is an absolute wackadoodle, I don't respond at all. I figure that will speak for itself. Anybody who reads this will see that the person's got a lot more issues than I do, and I'm not gonna justify them by responding to it. I'm not gonna give them some credibility by responding to it. If it is though a heartfelt thing, I send the response that I just told you about to say, hey, I'm sorry I'm sorry that you felt you had a bad experience here. I'm just learning about it for the first time. Please contact me. I'll do whatever I can to make this right. And I will, and that I'll follow up on that. They never do. But if they ever did, I would definitely follow up on it. Be very careful about rewarding reviews with discounts, free merchandise, etc. There's actually a Federal Trade Commission rule on these things. Whenever you get something in return for a positive review, that must be disclosed in the review at some point. Have you ever listened to any one of the game shows where at the end it says, some people have received things for promotional consideration? That's why that is there. That's an FTC rule that says that if I'm doing an endorsement for somebody, but I'm getting something in return, then that has to be disclosed as part of the review text. Podcasts. Well, this slide needs to be updated. Podcasts are explosive right now. Podcasts are the future of radio. A lot of my YouTube videos are listened to as podcasts because let's face it, the sight of me standing at a podium talking for 15 minutes is not that visually interesting. The content must entertain and inform. Remember, you are in show business. Okay, it's got to be entertaining. It has to be fun. It has to be dramatic. Make people laugh, make people cry, make people think, but do it in a way that is memorable. Okay. If you sound like Andy Devine, now some of you younger folks probably don't remember who he was. He was a famous TV and movie star of the 1940s and 1950s. He did a lot of westerns. He always played the funky, the down home sidekick to whoever the hero was. He was comic relief a lot of the times, but he had this very scratchy voice. He had this horrible scratchy voice. Most people, when they heard him on the radio, they would do their tuning because they thought their tuning was off, but no, it was just the way he sounded. If you really do have a horrible voice, hire a voiceover pro. If you have a British accent, by the way, you have a career in podcasting because you can do podcasts for other people. British accents always sound terrific. People always think that people with British accents are more intelligent, more educated. They've actually done studies of this. Always remember too that audio formats raise the pitch of your voice. I did radio all through college. And one of the first things they told me was, when you are speaking into the mic, lower your voice by at least half a note or two, because the microphones tend to raise your voice. So if you speak in a normal voice, it comes out sounding a little bit like this. Listen to your audio feed. And first, I'm also invest in some very good equipment, by the way. Get yourself a professional microphone. These cost about $50 on Amazon, but they're worth it. Also, get what they call a popper filter. Something it's a thing that goes over the microphone that basically takes care of plosive sounds like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. It gets rid of all those explosive P's and modulates it so you're not spitting into the microphone, because that always sounds awful. Keep them short, by the way. I'm not a favor of long podcasts. Nobody has time anymore to listen to these things. 15, 20 minutes max is all you would do. Here are some resources, by the way, for podcasts. There are a lot of new ones out. I'm not even familiar with all the new ones that are out. Some of you may know others. And if so, please feel free to do a public chat and tell people about them. That is not a problem. These are not the only people that are out there. You may want to make sure you do have the pop filter. There is a lot of software out there that will help you get radio quality sound. Do sweat about the sound quality, especially if you're doing anything dramatic with sound effects and stuff like that. Really sweat the miking. Have an audio engineer work with you because there's all kinds of tricks that you can do to muffle sounds, amplify sounds. It's a whole art in and of itself. If you're doing what you're doing here is a radio show, so give yourself the same. Treat yourself as professionally and deal with this as professionally as the host of a radio program would do. Okay, except for, of course, for the shock jocks, but we're not going to talk about them. Okay, YouTube on live video. This has been a very big thing for my practice. Most of my new clients now are coming at me because they've seen one of my YouTube videos. I actually have a YouTube video on how to sell anything to anybody that's just crossed the 300,000 viewer mark, and this is a 75-minute video. That has over 300 from people in 45 countries around the world. I'm getting emails from people in countries I can't even pronounce telling me what an impact my videos are having on their communities halfway across the world. And it's an amazing thing. I had no idea really how powerful this was until I started doing it. Again, it must be visually compelling, educational. Sweat the details. Lighting and background are important. If I were doing this as a YouTube video, I would not be lighting this the way it is right now. I would have at least one other light to have things a little bit brighter. Embed your videos on your website. Video is a very powerful marketing tool. If I'm looking at somebody's website and I see a video there, I will almost always click on it, even if it's just the person talking about what they do. A little video on your website. People these days are looking at video. They are not reading long textual articles. They're still reading text, but they want more bullets. They want more digestive. They want more executive summary. So that's it. Guerrilla tactics. These are some guerrilla things you can do. They're mostly offline tactics that you can do. As Zsa Zsa Gabor once said, there is no such thing as bad publicity. Years ago, I went to a trade show. I won't say for whom, it was out in California, but there was a company, a big player in the industry, that was denied a space, a booth space on the trade show floor. So what they did was they hired a bunch of interns to go out there. It was being held at a municipal sports stadium. And what they did was they planted themselves in all the parking lots. So when people pulled in, this nice young person wearing a t-shirt would come up and give you a free shopping bag with the company's logo on it. And inside there was a t-shirt with the company logo and brand on it. Free, absolutely free. They would just walk around in the cars and giving these things to people as they were going into the sports stadium to visit the trade show where the company itself was not an exhibitor. That is the greatest example I could think of guerrilla marketing. And it was very, very effective. I mean, they got more business than any of the exhibitors at that trade show just by doing that. Now, again, you got to be careful about how you do this. There's, trespassing rules and stuff like that. But here are some examples of how you can do guerrilla tactics. I could really do a whole hour program on each one of these things. The cutting edge of web e-commerce, new web marketing tools are being created and launched each month, but I'm always telling people, don't be too much of an early adopter. Sometimes when you adopt new technology, you can be so far ahead of the curve that you disappear from view. By all means, be with the times, but don't be so far ahead of the curve that you become invisible. People don't get what you do. I'm not so sure that now is the time to create an avatar on Meta. Maybe in 5 years' time, yes, but I don't think the virtual reality world is where you should be at this point. Maybe in another year or two, give it time. Okay, that's all I have to say. I've gone a little bit over. Here are some of my best-selling books, which go into a lot more detail about this. Also books by some other people. And here's where you can contact me if you have any questions that you don't want to ask in the next 5 minutes. So with that, Bob, let's open the floor. Let's look at the Q&A, and let's see if we can answer a few questions here before we part company.
Okay, that's great, Cliff. Thanks. We do have limited time and a lot of questions, so we'll take as many as we can up until the top of the hour. First one is from Larry. You mentioned earlier, Cliff, what is Google AdSense and why should e-commerce products businesses use it?
Okay, Google AdSense is basically a way that's their program to help you find the keywords that you need for your ads that you're using for search engine advertising, and it's an absolutely wonderful tool. For most e-commerce vendors, again, if you're advertising on a competing platform, of course, that's not going to be too helpful. But it's something that I think everybody, let's put it this way: it's sometimes difficult to know what the right keywords are for a particular business. So, for example, if you're searching for somebody like me, do you search for a lawyer or do you search for an attorney? Okay, which is the better? If you only have to choose one word, which one do you use? This is what Google AdSense does. It kind of helps you make those kinds of decisions.
Great. Along the similar vein, there's another quick one here on, you also use the term Google Alert, and Gigi was asking, what is Google Alert? Maybe you could just expand.
It's a wonderful tool, especially for me as a blogger. Google Alert basically tells you if you go to Google Alert and you type in a word or a phrase, it basically will tell you whenever something appears online with that exact word or that phrase in it, it will send you a notice and a link, and it's absolutely free. I do this all the time. I have a Google alert for Cliff Ennico, but more in turn, so that way, if anybody is saying something about me online, I know about it, and if it's something bad, I can respond. This is how I find out, by the way, if I get many negative or positive reviews. I don't have time to troll all the review sites looking for Cliff Ennico stuff. So Google Alert is a tremendous help to me that way. Also, too, I have a number. Whenever I do an article, I always throw in an oddball phrase, something that is a little off. And what I do with that is I take that and I do a Google alert for that phrase. So that way, if anybody is ripping off my article, if anybody is taking this and is putting this on their website, that's how I find out about it. And I can write a nasty letter to them telling them to cease and desist because they're violating my copyright.
Here's one from Michael. What are the disadvantages of an LLC owning a domain name And could a founder of a company not yet incorporated simply transfer/change the owner name from personal to the LLC name and change the address to a business address a few months after incorporating?
The answer is yes. You certainly could do that. You could put it in your own name for now. But the reason why I'm suggesting that you form a corporation or LLC, and I would do it first, is you want everything to be in the same place. You don't want to have a situation where all it's sometimes it's very hard to change an account. It's very easy to change a domain name registration. All you do is you change the admin contracts. But a Facebook ad account, for example, cannot be transferred from one person to another. If you create a Facebook ad account in your name, you cannot subsequently change it to your corporation or LLC. You have to set up a separate spending account for that and build it up to your previous level of spending. That is something I learned just recently, for example. So a lot of whenever you're looking to sell your business, a lot of the mistakes that happen when you look to sell a business can be resolved when you first set these accounts up. That's why I'm suggesting set up a corporation or LLC and make sure whenever you open a new account somewhere in cyberspace, make sure that it is tied to that corporation or LLC. So that way, whenever somebody comes along and buys your corporation or LLC, all of these accounts will automatically transfer over to the new owner. You don't have to go back and ask Facebook and Google for a gazillion different permissions to get the account to transfer over. Sales of e-commerce businesses, most business sales, as you know, Bob, are sales of assets rather than stock. That is not true in the e-commerce world. Most sales of e-commerce businesses are sales of stock because it's so hard otherwise to get all the assets to transfer over properly. That's another course that I could do, which I probably will do for SCORE sooner rather than later.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour and we don't have time for any more questions. But as Cliff mentioned, if you want to reach out directly to Cliff with some questions, I'm sure he'd be glad to get back to you. Just a reminder, the webinar has been recorded and the materials will be available in the next day or so on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And as we mentioned at the beginning, the next live webinar in this series is next Thursday, March 24th at 6 p.m. And the topic is Trusted Advisors Are Valuable at Every Stage of Business with Marianne Croce presenting. And again, if you would like to take advantage of free individual counseling, you can use the link that we showed on the screen, or you can go to our website and click on Request a Mentor. If I could also ask you to please fill out your evaluations for us at the end of the webinar. They're very helpful. I'd like to thank the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library for their help in planning this webinar with SCORE. And just a reminder that there is one more to go in this series. On behalf of SCORE, thank you very much for attending today. And in closing, a big thank you to Cliff for lots of valuable information today. Stay well, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Okay. Before I log off, thank you, Bob, as always. Excellent support.